Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I want to talk to you about some new releases and if the Dark Blooms collection is more worth it or the Wahala collection from Juvias Place. And we're also going to look at some Pat McGrath stuff and rank them as well. I will also be giving you my opinion on a secret multi-chrome that's in there. And but right off the bat, let's quickly rank this Pat McGrath collection. I've been talking about it forever and I never got around to doing it. My thoughts are actually this palette is super worth it. Even though I own both the Dark Star palette and the other Star Wars minis, I think this palette is great to have and great to travel with. But as far as these three, the Fleur Fantasia is my least favorite because it lacks shimmers and because it's a little bit too pastel-y for me right now to enjoy and really get use out of. Although I don't hate it that much, I just think it's my least favorite out of the three. These each retail for $58, and the issue with the Flora Fantasia is there's only like maybe one or two redeeming colors that I really like, is that lavender purple in there and that shiny pink color, but the other two, especially the gold, I'll probably never reach out for, so that's why it's my least favorite out of the three. In fact, the new Natasha DENONA TRIOCHROME has some pastel pinks in there which are pretty comparable, but my second least favorite is probably going to be the Interstellar Icon one, and then my favorite is probably the Risque Rose one, just because the mixture of that violet shade and that silver shade, even the brown, I find that I reach out for a lot, even though there's a ton of browns in her palette. So this would be the order I would rank them. But her mega palette is the best value for money, so that's something to keep in mind. Now before we go into these Colourpop Dark Bloom palettes, I wanted to quickly go over this new Juvias Place WAHALA 2 palette and the secret hidden multi-chrome that's in there. So real quick, just showing you guys what the swatches look like. They're really nothing special so far except for that multi-chrome that keeps standing out. So I think compared to the Wahala 1 palette, this is a lot less exciting. It has this entire row of grays. They're a little bit sneaky here. They snuck in this multi-chrome here in the beginning called Fake, and then everything else is either a matte, a shimmer, or a glitter. It's kind of like the cheaper version of the See You Later palette by Violet Voss. Even the swatches just look like a little bit more watered down from that, and given this palette is already like 2/3 of the price of that palette, it makes sense because that one was about like $49 and this is like $32, so you are definitely getting what you're paying for here. With the other colors, you have those like bright blues and greens, but they're not quite as bright as the Violet Voss. And just for fun, she's thrown in that one multi-chrome eyeshadow in there, so you are going to be getting what you're paying for. And the square pans don't bother me as much. It's just the pressed glitter I can't with. It really bothers me. Now on the plus side, you are getting this beautiful multi-chrome, which I will say is just about the same multi-chrome that you get in an expensive $129 palette from Natasha DENONA. It's called Color Flip there, and it is exactly the same multi-chrome. It's like there's no difference between that, and it's also the same multi-chrome that Pat McGrath shown us in the Divine Rose 2. So these are the same multi-chrome. The flip is the same, the color is the same. I mean, maybe like a tiny difference, but if you ever fantasized about getting those palettes and you found that it was outside your budget, then this one for $38 is definitely going to be more within someone's budget. And can you tell which one's Natasha DENONA, which one's Pat McGrath, and which one's Juvias Place? I don't think you can, and that's the beauty of it. Alright, so moving on to the Colourpop Dark Bloom release. So Colourpop, as you know by now, release a new palette almost every week, sometimes twice a week, and sometimes, I don't know, multiple times a month. The problem with this release was that they went and put all similar colors in one palette and just called it a day. And because they were all dark and grungy colors, they just decided to put all browns and more like glitteries in this one, call it Grandeur. This Baroque palette is mostly like blues and dark blues, so you get a very muddy dark blue, light blue sort of look with that palette. And then they went and decided to put a bunch of like reds and like burgundies in the other one. So far this is all looking minus 2 good shades in each palette. Everything else looks kind of wasteful and repetitive. So what I decided to do was pick my favorites from each palette and consolidate them into one palette. So I want to go ahead and start with the Ornate palette. The shades that are speaking to me the most are that mustardy siren color, so I'm going to pop that guy out, and I'm going to use this for a new custom palette that I'm going to be creating with all 3 of them. Then I'm thinking that middle red shade color, it's definitely unique. I'm only going for the colors that I think are unique here, and everything else kind of blends into more like a muddy shade. So the colors that I'm really seeking are more like unique shimmery colors that I don't see in their other collections. So far I picked these 3 out, and I think those are the ones I'm going to stick to. I have to pick 3 from this. It probably won't be the first one because it's very chalky. I think the second one has some potential because it's a purpley gray, and then these greens almost look very similar to each other, so I'm going to skip out on those. So I think I know what greens I'm going for. I'm going to pop out this middle guy because this is a more unique color in here. So I still need to find 2 more from this Baroque palette, and it's kind of difficult because these colors almost all look the same with the exception of those 2 purpley shimmers that I think I'm going to pop those guys out. So this purpley gray color, I found it had a nice shift to it, and this one was almost similar but with a very slight variation. So if I had to pick another unique color from here, I think I'll go with the other shimmery gray. So I'm going to get that guy out, and this is going to be for my custom palette of the 3. And then lastly we have this Grandeur palette. Now this one, it was my least favorite palette because the colors almost all looked very brown and very glittery. I definitely will not be picking any pressed glitters out of these, so I think I already know what I'm going to pick out. I also do need a brow bone color in my custom palette, so it's going to be a little tricky there. So between this gold here and one in the earlier palette, I have to decide which one I'm going to choose as my brow bone color. I'm thinking definitely like these warm browns, so I'm going to grab one of those warm browns. I don't bother with the shade names in the palette because it's easier to just say, hey, that bricky brown color is the one that I'm really interested in right now. And another unique one that I kind of like is this deeper one with a shift to it. I'm debating if I should get this green. I think I'll just get that green anyway. And I think so far I have my custom palette right here. If you guys can see, this is going to be far easier to create looks with rather than just being stuck with an all-around grungy blue palette, or just an all-around red palette, or an all-around brown palette. So I'm just thinking, do I really need that brown bone color to be a little lighter? Because right now this palette that I've created doesn't have a brow bone, but I'm kind of happy with it because it's mostly fall colors with unique shifts to it. So this is going to be my custom palette of the 3. I think I can get away with another custom palette with a mixture of warms and cools in it, just to create looks that I find to be more flattering with a combination of cool and warm. So I'm going to gently depot the other colors that I'm interested in. So I'm going to leave this pressed glitter one alone because I'm not interested in that. I think I will probably gravitate more towards the blue in the different palettes. So these are my second best choices for the second best palette of the 3. I wasn't able to get all of the shades into the first custom palette, so here I'm just creating a combination of cool tones and warm tones for my second best palette of the 3, and these reds are probably my second choice. Now I hope I can create looks horizontally and vertically for this palette. So on the right I will be creating more like cool tones, and then on the bottom row I'm going to put shades that are close to each other to create a unique look horizontally. So far, this palette is coming along pretty nicely. I like how the top row I have some nice brow bone colors that start off with warm and then they lead to cool. So on the left side of the palette it's mostly warms, and the right side it's mostly cool tones, and I think that would be helpful when you're creating a look to mix both cool tone and warm tone together to get the maximum effect for that look, or just generally a better eye look that doesn't turn into a full muddy color, which what it was previously. To me, it looked like it would just be combined into one color. And right now I'm kind of happy with my second choice palette, so it's got like some nice cool tones and warm tones in it. I think I'm going to add a brown in there, and so far there you have it, guys. We have 2 custom palettes out of the 3 that I think I'll get a lot of use out of, and I'll probably declutter the rest. Let me know in the comment section below if you preferred my custom palettes or the palettes that Colourpop created that were more monochromatic, and let me know in general if you're going to be picking up any of these in the comment section. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.